Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, a South African court bars public schools from promoting any one religion over the other after being asked to find that the favouring of Christianity in state educational establishments was unconstitutional. Also, Uganda now houses almost 1 million South Sudanese refugees, but the pressure of hosting so many is causing problems. Disagreements over land and resources between host communities and refugees are on the rise. And a former Guantanamo detainee who's returned to Tunisia after having spent 9 years at the infamous prison in Cuba claims that life in his hometown's worse than it was in the US-run detention center. But first, in a landmark ruling, the South African High Court on Wednesday ruled that public schools can't promote one religion to the exclusion of others. The case was brought by a group called the Organisation for Religious Education and Democracy, known as OGOD, the acronym made by its Afrikaans name. Its founder believes that state schools are not the place to shape or uphold people's religious beliefs, and had wanted the religious policy of 6 schools to be declared unconstitutional. The Basic Minister for Education supported that application. Krista Maar brings us more from Johannesburg. Krista, how significant is this judgment? Do South Africans care?
Yes, I mean, I think South Africans do care. South Africa is, many segments of South Africa are deeply religious. The country is 80% Christian. The next religious group is Muslim at 1.5%. So there will be some sectors of the Christian community who feel that this is an affront to their right to be able to have a religious atmosphere in the public education system. And that would certainly be the argument of the schools that were the defendants in the case. On the other hand, there are also several civil society groups here that are fierce proponents of the democratic constitution, which includes freedom of religion as a principle. And those groups would see this as a victory, that all religions should be treated equitably in public institutions, and that no religion, Christianity specifically, should have dominance.
So why was this brought in the first place? Is it about the specific teaching of religious studies, or was it more about the wider curriculum being taught in Christian schools?
There may have been some issues of curriculum, but the thrust of the case that the group brought was really about an atmosphere that they found troubling, a dominance of Christianity in many public schools that they felt was unacceptable in the democratic era in South Africa. Under the previous apartheid government, there was a Christian education program that was propagated by that national government, and this group feels that it is not appropriate in a democratic South Africa to give that kind of dominance to any one religion. And that is really what the judge ruled on today, saying that religious activities in schools are okay, but one cannot have prominence over another, and that they have to be voluntary in the public setting.
Thanks very much. Krista Maar there for us in Johannesburg. Look now at some news in brief. The Zimbabwean pastor behind the anti-government This Flag protest movement has been freed on bail. Evan Mawarire was accused of promoting violence after being arrested on Monday whilst speaking to striking medical students at the University of Zimbabwe. He's still to face trial for subversion for posting videos online in 2016, speaking out against corruption and social inequality. On Wednesday, Pope Francis led a ceremony at the Vatican for the Catholic Church's latest cardinals. Amongst the 5 getting their red hats was Bamako Archbishop Jean Zerbo. He's the first ever cardinal from Mali. He's worked to help reconcile divisions between rival communities in his homeland. But his reputation was overshadowed somewhat by recent allegations that he has millions in a Swiss bank account. The cardinals are sometimes referred to as princes of the church and help advise the pontiff to help elect his successor. Kenya is going to be the first African country to get the generic version of the latest drug for people living with AIDS and HIV. 27,000 people will initially be given a form of dolutegravir free of charge before it's made available for routine use. Nigeria and Uganda plan on following suit later this year. The move is part of efforts to make drugs widely used in developed countries more accessible in lower-income nations. The bodies of 25 migrants who drowned trying to reach Europe have been found near Tripoli in Libya. The onset of warm weather has seen a surge of people trying to make the dangerous trip across the Mediterranean. Over 10,000 migrants have been rescued this week alone. Well, South Sudan's civil wars led to a massive exodus to Uganda. There are now about 1 million refugees there, and though at first Kampala was praised for welcoming them, tensions with locals are rising. On top of that are the frequent ethnic skirmishes within South Sudanese refugee communities that mirror conflict dynamics back home. Our Simona Foltin reports from the Bidi Bidi refugee settlement.
Betty Jagoro, a refugee from South Sudan, has found a new home in the Bidi Bidi refugee camp in northern Uganda. The country has been praised for taking in almost 1 million South Sudanese fleeing war. But local resources are depleting fast, with tensions between locals and refugees on the rise. Firewood, in particular, is a source of conflict.
We normally get the wood from nearby forests, but sometimes we face problems. One time we went and the locals chased us from there with bows and arrows.
Lack of donor funding has laid fertile ground for these tensions. Only 17% of the €750 million funding appeal has been pledged. Many Ugandans hoped the refugees would attract better services and infrastructure, and are disappointed.
Since the refugees started coming, we haven't received anything, but they're using our resources. We want the authorities to build more boreholes and schools.
As if that wasn't enough, authorities also struggle to contain ethnic skirmishes between South Sudanese refugees. Ethnic Equatorians have attacked members of the Dinka tribe in retaliation for atrocities committed by the Dinka-dominated government back home. Rachel Kwang's brother was hospitalized after one such incident.
My brother was in Arua when he was attacked. They took his money and then they started hitting him with a knife.
Uganda is doing what it can to keep frictions at bay.
Among the pillars in the settlement transformation agenda, we are addressing the question of peaceful coexistence, such that we encourage people to live side by side.
But such programs need funding. If donors don't step up to the plate, tensions could spill into violence, further spreading the fallout of South Sudan's civil war.
Well, a former Guantanamo prisoner says that he preferred life in the Cuban jail to freedom in Tunisia. Salah Sassi says he's faced regular harassment and abuse from the country's security forces since he was released. Nicolas Chemin tells us more.
Salah Sassi spent 9 years in Guantanamo prison. He was transferred there after being arrested in Pakistan and accused of having links with Al-Qaeda. Sassi has been back in Tunisia for 4 years, but he says he's constantly harassed by security forces.
Guantanamo is better than this place, because in Guantanamo I know that I'm a prisoner, and I do not think either about life concerns or my future, and I'm convinced of what I am. But here I'm imprisoned among people, and I cannot communicate with them, and my family is harassed.
Organizations like Human Rights Watch say many former Guantanamo detainees have suffered similar experiences in Tunisia.
Tunisians tend to automatically reject and stigmatize these people. So we need a major public awareness campaign by the authorities and by NGOs to change people's perceptions.
NGOs say that Sassi is not the only one who's told them he'd prefer to return to Guantanamo rather than be a victim of harassment in Tunisia.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks very much for joining us. Do so again. Take care.